Thank you for joining us for this exclusive Words Their Way Classroom and Structured Literacy in a Science of Reading Environment presentation with Donald Baer. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce you to Donald Baer. I was fortunate enough to read one of Donald Baer's, I think it was the third edition of the Professional Development Series. And in one of my methods courses for my master's, had to read it cover to cover. So it's very interesting, and I think kind of ironic to have read that book cover to cover and now just have the honor to introduce him. Donald is a professor emeritus in literacy studies at Iowa State and University of Nevada, Reno, where he directed literacy centers and taught at all levels. A former classroom teacher, Donald is a co-author of numerous articles, chapters, and 17 books, including Word Study for Phonics, Spelling and Vocabulary Instruction, and Words Their Way Classroom. His expertise and research explores the synchrony of literacy development from beginning concept of word, phonological awareness, and pre-kindergarten to how morphology or vocabulary underlies academic vocabulary learning. He has received awards for teaching and service and has served on boards and advisory groups for professional organizations. We are looking forward to this presentation today on such a hot topic. Without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Donald.
Thank you, Sam. It's an honor to be here with you and to be with you, Sam, and the rest of the Rubicon Salvis group, and to be with my friends in Canada. It's really an honor to be with you. I have a limited amount of time, so I'll try to relax and not to talk too quickly, but that's my face, and you can come to my website. I've been teaching for 48 years, mostly at university. I started as a third grade teacher. My topical outline, as you see, there are two parts. One is, what is structured literacy? And I'll try not to be too technical, but I'll show you the relationship between structured literacy and the science of reading. Then I'm going to move to approaches to teaching reading and writing. How does this translate, this structured literacy, into your reading, writing, phonics, spelling, and vocabulary? Then the second part of my talk looks at the relationship between the activities that we do in Words Their Way and development of the structured literacy parts of literacy. When we talk about the science of reading, a lot of people think about structured literacy. Structured literacy in many ways is about the first 11 seconds of reading. It can happen very quickly, and people think of it as related to phonics, phonological awareness, and I'll work through that. But as you see, I'm going to look at the emergent diet, beginning reading, transitional reading, intermediate and advanced. So my goal is to show the components of structured literacy across the developmental spectrum. That's what I'm about, is looking at development. So how does Words Their Way align with the literacy components? And we have a handout for you, and the website, or the link rather, will be posted for us. And you can see that this handout on the left-hand side talks about the structured literacy components. And on the right-hand side, how does Words Their Way word study fit into each of these 6 components? We start with phonology and go down to semantics. And again, this is the language that a lot of the science of reading is couched in. And so let's look at the sort of a definition, and this comes from the International Dyslexia Association. Structured literacy explicitly teaches, I'm going to do a close read on this one, explicitly teaches. So that's an important word. It's not casual. We want casual, but we also need to be explicit. Systematic. Systematic means in a scope and sequence that matches what the students need. And like as I said, often it's related to identification, word identification, and decoding, and rightly so. If you can, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Now, these benefit, that is, these components, these strategies, benefit most students. Well, I would say all students benefit from explicit strategies in various balances for the student, but are vital for those with dyslexia. And that's the word that people get frustrated by or encouraged by. I'm not going to talk about dyslexia in a big way, but I'm going to show you where dyslexia shows up early on. I'm also going to show you the difference, some of the ways that dyslexia relates to development and the difference among the stages of development that students go through. So let's think about dyslexia as we go. As I said, we'll look at phonology, and then we'll look at the components and words their way. This is perhaps the most important slide. And this is important to you as teachers because it economizes the way we teach. Word study is equal to phonics, spelling, and vocabulary. When I'm teaching phonics, I'm also teaching spelling. And inversely, when I'm teaching spelling, I'm often teaching phonics. And take it one step further, spelling and vocabulary are highly related. So we want to reconceptualize how we're teaching spelling and combine it into how we're teaching phonics. And I'll show you what the research says on this. So why do we do word study? Because becoming literate depends on the fast, accurate recognition of words and fast, accurate production of words in writing so that the reader can attend to making meaning. And then here comes that word explicit. Word study explicitly teaches students with hands-on activities the vital skills necessary to excel at word recognition, spelling, and vocabulary. So that's what I'm about. That's what Words Their Way Classroom is about. And that's what this talk is about. On the right-hand side, you see something that we published in 1996, The Braid of Literacy. And the fancy word there is orthography. I'd like to use that word more often because it combines the reading, the decoding, with the writing, the encoding. On the left-hand side, you see a very popular reading rope. We talked about it. I was in favor of braid, but this rope is very important and very useful. At the bottom, under word recognition, you see phonological awareness, sight recognition, decoding. And then at the top, you see a lot of big concepts like background knowledge, language structures. So this rope winds into skilled reading. Regardless, word study needs to be about explicit instruction for the fast, accurate recognition of words. Now, this is where I live. These are the 5 stages of development. And by the way, our programs are developed according to these 5 stages. At the top in blue, you see the reading stages. At the bottom, you see the spelling stages. Overlying it is the alphabet, pattern, and meaning. These are the three layers of the writing system. Now, all of this varies by the language that you're reading. This is a good model for English. If I were teaching a more transparent writing system, the beginning stage would last longer because you don't get into patterns as vigorously until you get to two-syllable words. So the blue, and let me show you more. These are the spelling stages. These are the reading stages. And what you're going to see in a few minutes is that I am a nut about spelling. I look at children's spelling the way people also look at word recognition. I look to see what spelling tells me about students' ability to read words. So if you spell bad, B-A-D, I'm going to run my finger up and I will bet that you will be a beginning reader. You read aloud, you're word by word, you're finger pointing. Now I know this is hard to read. Here we can see the stages of spelling, and you can see the grade level. Now these grade levels vary, but hopefully by second grade, students are at least looking at finishing up looking at single syllable words. Samantha likes this page a lot. I call this a concordance. On the right-hand side, you see book levels, like if you use letters and we'd say that you're teaching second grade, you might think about JK, 1819, 1820, and then move over. I'm thinking about second grade, and I'm thinking about the middle within word pattern stage of spelling. Doesn't that make sense to you that reading and spelling are highly related? Matter of fact, I take their spelling and I write it into a chart, and then I think about my word study groups. This is a third grade classroom I worked in, and these are 3 groups that the teacher had. Often these word study groups are also their guided reading groups. Now, here's the scope and sequence: alphabet, pattern, meaning. And I'm going to look at the structured literacy according to the scope and sequence. Again, orthographic knowledge, 2 components: your memory for spelling and your knowledge of patterns. Both have to go together. And by the way, that's where we can see what I call primary reading difficulties, as opposed to, let's say, dyslexia. I'm more comfortable because I don't know the child well enough often. But sometimes children who have primary brain-related difficulties have difficulties with memory of spelling, but also seeing the patterns in words. So it's essential to reading and spelling. And orthographic knowledge is what makes reading and writing part of the same process. I hope you've been reading a little bit about, or a lot about, Linnea Airey's work. And this is very much the same, that reading and writing are part of the same processes. Chuck Perfetti, Pittsburgh, important work to understand how when I'm teaching spelling, I'm also teaching phonics. And this is an economy for us as teachers. So spelling instruction is part of literacy. And here's a nice sentence: students learn more about reading from spelling than they do about spelling from reading. So again, word study is equal to phonics, spelling, and vocabulary. Let's get into the activities. This is the heart of word study for a lot of our activities, is categorizing those that fit and those that don't, helping students to see the sound symbol correspondences, the patterns in words, and the meaning connections. So effective word study involves word hunts, word study notebooks, writing sorts, concept sorts. And I'm going to show you all of these. So let's start with phonology. And that is the first row. And we're looking at emergent and beginning readers up to the middle of first grade, hopefully. So on the left-hand side, we're looking at the sound structure of spoken words, including phonemic awareness, the ability to segment sounds, blend them, and that's central to phonology. What I want to say is I'm going to broaden your concept of phonology. Often we think of phonemic awareness first, but I'm going to challenge us to look further up the language stream. When I say over here, bottom, sound segmenting, blending, I'm going to be talking often about the phrasal level, the rhythmic level. And so these are the 6 components of the literacy diet during the emergent stage. Oral language is so important. As a reading clinic person, I look at oral language in full detail. I've got to understand that child's language development. But I'm really not going there today. But I can't tell you how important that is. And I can't tell you how many of the primary reading difficulties are lodged in number 1, oral language development. So alphabet knowledge, phonological awareness, letter sound, concepts about print, and number 6, those of you who are fond of Marie Clay will easily think of concept of word in text, and I'm going to describe that for you. It's often ignored, and our program includes concept of word in text. So here's the progression of phonological awareness. We start with rhymes and syllables. We talk in phrases, breath groups, speech envelopes. And so we're trying to get the child to see into their phrases, to see the syllables. Then we look at onset and rhyme, and then individual phonemes. I do want to point out that I can build these activities in a differentiated way around the same poem, the same reading materials. But the word study will be different. I believe that we can start literacy instruction earlier and looking at the phrasal and rhythmic level. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. There's Goswami, and there's, in this case, it's me, but I can, if you go to that reference, there are plenty of other references, and that's a online reference. Cher has written, primary reading difficulties may share a temporal processing dysfunction. Okay, some children with primary reading difficulties show impaired auditory rhythm perception, and I've been doing a fair amount of research in that area. So we want to start earlier. And these are some of the activities that we'll look at with our 3.5 to 5-year-olds. And we're tracking concept of word. My teacher taught me it was the miracle of reading. That ability to track is so important. And it's cognitive as well. And as you know, I'm going to say a few children experience serious delays in acquiring a cow. So let me show you what cow is. You play with the ditty, 1, 2, buckle my shoe, and we have rhymes and ditties that you can use. And then you have the child track as she goes. And you see what throws her off. 2-syllable words throw the children off. And if you watch the video, it's on my website. He goes 1, 2, buckle my, and she's pointing to my at when she says the second syllable of buckle. Or she could have gone 1, 2, buckle my. You see, we don't talk in words. We talk in phrases and breath groups. And that's what emergent readers are trying to figure out. Matter of fact, they will not learn phonics and sight words with any ease until they have a cow. You can see that that is so important. And this is how they write. And gradually they're doing letter sound correspondence, bed, ship, drive, that's a J, bump, when. And so they start with consonants, and then gradually they start putting in vowels. And the vowels that they put in are very interesting. And we like to say that nearly all invented spellings are interestingly correct. We're learning about the child's word knowledge, their orthographic knowledge, their mapping skills by looking at their spelling as well. So we do concept sorts. Here's a teacher teaching about a child talking about a concept sort of weather and moon and sun she had pasted together. We have concept sorts for games versus clothing. Here I am with some kids doing a concept sort, and they're explaining their sort to me. And here are 2 children reading together in their reading library. And so now we're at the second row, sound symbol association. And we're really still talking about late emergent. I should move that up just a hair, and beginning readers. So once they have developed phonemic awareness and concept of word in text, they learn the alphabetic principle. And we have done a great deal of research in that area. And these are some activities: alphabet games, picture sorts for beginning sounds. All of these activities are in our program. Let me show you. So we can start with a nice little rhyme, take a few sentences from it. We have these great reading library. Here's a student of mine looking with the kindergarten group, and they were doing a hunting way they will go, we will go, and the child is tracking. And Regina can learn about the child's concept of word by their ability to track. And then we have them reproduce it, and they're doing this as an independent activity. I want to point out that in our word study, some of it is directed explicit, but every day the children are involved in word study, looking at beginning sounds, and I'll show you more activities. But a lot of we have to teach the children independent activities and ways of working together. If you look at the video, you'll see children on the floor as a small group, pointing and trying to learn concept of word. So rhymes, onset, and now individual phonemes. You want to set up a chart like this for beginning consonant sorts. The children are working in pairs. This is an individual sort. This is actually a teacher demonstrating. And then the children will do the same sort at their seats. And this is our program, Words Their Way Classroom, and we have this digitally. And you can hear the word themselves come up. And one of the strengths of our program is how good the pictures are. And these, so you see, we have a book of rhymes, we have interactive sorts, writing sorts, a classroom library, and a bingo game. And the games are with each sort, and they're great for going home. So here are 2 kids working together. You'll see I have 3 areas of the classroom: circle, seat, center. Here's a child sorting at her seat. Now we're solidly into the beginning stage, and I'm going to move quickly. You already saw this, but what is interesting is that here they put in vowels, and those vowels, they're spelling like little Saxons, the way English used to be before 1066. So it's quite interesting. Let me go to the next slide. They spell by the way it feels in the mouth. They don't consciously do this, but this is one of those multisensory times when we want them to say the words as they sort so that they can engage articulatory gestures. The Linda mood is like that, and we are like that in terms of looking at their development at this point. So they're sorting word families, they're working at their seats, writing the sorts. Here's Miss Pennell sharing her onset rhyme, working with the children at their seats. I love that one. Bottom left, you see the child getting wet. Hard to do in black and white. So we have a ton of games. Now we're up to syllables, and this is a little confusing because they combine a couple of different things. They're looking at syllables and graphemes, it almost sound symbol correspondence. But now they're getting into polysyllabic words. And that's what I'm going to focus on, is the 6 syllables types. And that is something that's very important during the syllables and affixes stage, when the children are ready to examine 2-syllable words. Let me show you. First, we start with patterns. That's what they're talking about here. They're talking about patterns like CVC, CVCE, and then we'll get into the 2-syllable words, closed and open syllables. So let's start with the single-syllable words. And by the way, we call this the black hole of reading. A lot of our tier 2 and tier 3, 2nd through 4th graders and 5th and 6th graders are still in this stage. I work with a lot of kids at this level who are older than they should be. They're using but confusing. I'm a Southerner by birth, and so that's a nice little phrase. They're using but confusing long vowel patterns. And that's another example by a Spanish speaker, but they all are reasonable in their spelling. And these are the reading behaviors that we expect of early transitional readers who are no longer beginning readers. And it's a long stage. A lot is going on. They're looking at consonant, vowel, vowel, consonant. They're looking at CVV, and they're comparing it to the primordial short vowel pattern, like in cab. So now let's talk turkey about teaching. Let's look at the word study lesson plan format. So I'm starting a new sort with my kids. I'm going to demonstrate, sort and check. Most important, not most importantly, but very importantly, they need to reflect. They need to talk about why you sorted the way you did. And then finally, and this is a big one, we have to extend. We have to have them involved in the activity every day for 10 minutes. Now, they may only be with me for 15 minutes to introduce the sort and some check-in. Towards the end of my talk, which is coming quickly, I will be sharing some schedules that you can meditate on later. But we have to learn how to manage our classrooms so that they have time to extend and practice. So here's Ms. Flores. She's demonstrated the sort, and the kids are going to take that back to their seat, cut it up, and work on it all week long at least. And you can see the sort. By the way, those of you who know Words Their Way, we don't put the categories at the top until afterwards. So you see this is in bolded print shape and glass, and day. We want them to use those, sort by sound first, and then by pattern. Here's a Words Their Way classroom sort. Here's an activity, a writing sort, a chart, sorry. This is the type of reading that they're doing. This is a group of first graders sorting by long vowel patterns. They said, it was a little tricky, but we figured it out. With English learners, this is a very good time to work on the vowels of English. And a picture sort is good for that. So I'm just showing you some sorts that we have in our program. This is called a writing sort. And so this is a good spelling test, if you will. I'll have the kids write this out, and then I'll call a word like paint. Where would you put it? And then they would write it under the correct column. I like to have the children chart their patterns. Now we're up to upper level word study. And you can see, if you follow this down, this guy has shopping. Spoil is still pretty tough, and the R control and chewed. So this person is just beginning to look very concretely at two-syllable words. And in the structured literacy, they're talking about syntax, morphology, and semantics. And so I'm really looking at words' grammatical structures. We've already really talked about language during the early stages. Morphology, that's a big word, and I'm going to talk about that. We need to use that word more often. So there's inflected morphology and derivational morphology. Both are important, and they constitute the upper level of word study. It's called generative morphology. I love this part. Here's a simple sort of contractions. Semantics. This is where semantics and morphology come in. When we learn one word, we're learning 10. And when we introduce a root, we're learning exponentially. And so this teacher is looking at consonant doubling and E drop. And you can see the sort at the bottom of the page there. And that's a similar sort. And then they're writing the sort into their word study notebook at their seats. I don't have to see them all the time, but they can work independently at their seats. These are some activities that are big in our program. We always want them to think of related words and make the meaning connection. I'm going to skip now to an example of and you have more in my handout. And so I'm going to skip, though, for time's sake, to the materials. And these are the 6 components that you'll see in the Words Their Way classroom. And I'm going to demonstrate by using an upper level word sort. Pretty tough. Now, we all have to relax when we do upper level word study, because I was not taught this. I've only learned this as an adult, really, and I've been very lucky. But we can show students how we're learning, and we can show them how duct means to lead. And this material is in our program. We like to say that Words Their Way Classroom is educative. We're showing you things to teach you, to teach the kids, but also to teach them how we examine words. So you're modeling for them. And this is the derivational relations. And you can see all the sorts that, like in this case, 21 to 26. And you can see on the left the different activities. At this stage, there look like there are 38 different sorts, and there's spell checks all along the way. Speed sort, root work. So here's a sort. And they sort by pattern. And I wonder what VER means. Well, there's the word reverse and convert and conversion. How do they mean the same? And in this case, it means to turn. We can do a writing sort or a semantic web. And we always have a game to go with it. Oh, this is our upper level middle school and high school program. And this is a great one. You're looking at patrimony, matrimony, and fraternal, frat, pat, and mat. A pretty cool word study because it's really teaching vocabulary. We have root trees. This is a group that you can see the root tree in the back, and they're doing a whole class activity. And then they're working independently. What does COM mean? Well, this will also help you with spelling because COM turned into COR, and COM also turned into CON and COL, and they all mean with. Isn't that wonderful? And so you see the rest of the class, they're reading, and this is differentiated word study with a small group in Mrs. Ribeiro's class. So now let's quickly look, I have 5 minutes left, looking at schedules and routines. This is a 5-day schedule. It's pretty good, but you need to extend it and cut it. If they get it in 3 days, go on. If they need 7 days, slow down and reconsider what you're doing. Maybe we need to take a step backwards. Maybe they just need a little more time. So we introduce the sort and supervise individual sorting, and then they resort either for homework or for seat work. So Tuesday they resort. Now they might do it independently, and I'll just walk around. They love speed sorts, and they can do this with the partner if that feels right. Word study notebook. This is easy to figure out. This is an easy routine. This is a routine for 1st and 3rd grade. There are 3 areas of the classroom: circle, seat, center. And this allows me to differentiate my word study. Circle time is where I'm hanging out. This is a 1st grade classroom, and this is an individual sheet the kids had to fill in their independent work. This is interesting. This is an offset where I'm only meeting with the kids 3 times a week. And this is more for intermediate grades. This is a word study contract. Again, good for intermediate grades and up. I'm going to skip this, but I do have some slides for you. I am an interventionist with my 40 years of word study at university reading clinics and in classrooms. Let me point out, if we want to talk turkey about word study, we've got to talk about these other things. And I happen to call it root. It used to be RUR, but I work with so many English learners that I think we added the talk with. So it's called Root, and you can see the stars. Most of the time in my reading clinics or reading centers, I'm looking at read with and word study in a differentiated way. I can do read to, I can do talk with, and I can do write with in non-differentiated settings. But read with and word study need to be focused on children's development. These are some additional resources, and I think these are simply online. And some other articles. I want to send this back to Rubicon Publishing, and I really thank you for involving me today. It's been fun. There's my website. And thank you for joining us. Let me go back to the beginning. And Sam, do you want to come on in and help us out?
Of course, Donald. Thank you so much for just you sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your expertise. A few questions for you have been coming in with the Right to Read report and the science of reading. There's a higher emphasis on there's a call to action for phonological awareness. And I know you spoke a lot about that. Looking at the picture cards in the early stages, I know there's a lot of that starts with the picture cards. What would you suggest to really keep that at the, I guess you would call it more of the phonemic awareness stage, where it's that more isolation of the beginning sounds? What would you recommend for educators, especially if the headers have the grapheme or the letter associated with them on the card?
Good. Yes, you're exactly right. Let me back up. Phonological awareness is a big topic. I don't think we've done justice to the pre-KK kids who aren't ready for T makes the T sound. They can do it some, but they aren't ready to learn sight words with any ease. Now, in the States here, we're getting pushed into teach these sight words, teach these sight words. Now, to come to your very direct question, I'm having the children sort by sound. Let's say words that start like ball at the beginning. And I will have already used those pictures in concept sorts like games versus clothing. But now I'm ready to sort them by words that sound like ball at the beginning and words that sound like monkey at the beginning. And so I'll have them sort. You've got to use the pictures at the top. If you put a T at the top, you're trying to ask them to make that letter sound association. They need to, so a golden rule of sorting is to sort by sound and then by letter or by pattern. Sorry, Sam.
No, I just love what you said there. And I remember we used to use words their way in our preschools, actually, which I'm sure you'd love to hear. And we did just that, right? We would take the initial consonant sound sorts, and we would remove the grapheme or the actual letter to really make it that true phonological awareness piece. Of course, bringing in the letters when appropriate. I didn't realize this when you said that the concept sorts that are at the beginning prior to the initial sound sorts. So those are repeated. Some of those are repeated cards.
Absolutely. Now, that's a bit important point. If at the beginning of our program, they're concept sorts. If the kids are already, so move along at the pace, teachers, that you see your children need. We have a lot, for example, we have a lot of concept sorts at the beginning, and you don't have to do all of them. You can move sort of fast. If they know the names of the pictures and they have a concept of word, then they're ready for that sound symbol correspondence.
You mean if they have a cow?
If they have a cow, if they can point to Sam, the Baker man and point accurately, they will learn sight words. Now, I might do word rings because they'll only learn a few sight words, just a few. But then gradually we take index cards and cut them into fourths. And that's where we pick up our sight words. Often, don't you know, their names. But you also know that Sam the Baker man, if that were the text, they'd pick up Sam before Baker, unless they knew B. But the first word, the last word, and then the word in the middle. That's a principle of psychology of perception, beginning and middle. Isn't that fun? When they look at their spelling, they spell the first sound, the last sound, and then go for the middle.
Yeah, no,
Now, concept of word is an important, pardon me, as long as I have my Canadian friends with me. Marie Clay's dissertation was a foundation for my dissertation 100 years ago on pauses. She looked at word by word reading and measured pauses in children. And we had her come to University of Virginia, and Daryl Morris had her out in Chicago. And we're looking at concept of word the same way that she looks at it in the SANS test, let's say. Are they able to track? And it's very important. Do we have another question, Sam?
No, thank you so much. This actually brings me to you, Donald. I've co-presented with you, and I've heard you speak and read books of yours many times, but I learn something new every time I get the opportunity to be with you. So thank you again for that.
Oh, I just make things up, so I learned something. No, I'm just playing.
But one of the things I think you alluded to, and maybe you said before, is, and I know that there's a lot of talk around sight words and heart words, and is it that, you know, and this might be a whole nother conversation, but I feel like you've shared where sight words are picked up through reading, right? And through writing, or is it, and could you speak a little bit more on that?
Yes, if I understood you correctly, a lot of times we're teaching the high frequency words, which are often irregular.
Correct.
Oh, you just have to memorize them. And to some extent that is true. So in my ditties, in my texts, in my in their dictations, I will try to push for some sight words like is and the, etc. Or if I'm working on phonics, let's say a consonant digraph like WH, I'll try to get whistle in there or another WH word. The high frequency words are irregular. They're old words often, but they aren't as irregular as you think. That is, okay, take the word from. Well, doesn't the FR still work? Doesn't the M still work? So you can still open up these high frequency words for the phonics in there that does work. Obviously, the from, the O is the difficulty. Same with W, was, with the beginning sound. So don't run away from high frequency words, but they do take longer to learn. They don't have an easy referent. They're often hard to pronounce, and we want to slip them in gradually in their word banks. And so students collect sight words from what they read, and we use those words to supplement the sorts that we're doing in our programs.
So another question coming in is, you know, I hear you talking about different meeting students where they are, and having really words their way as this developmental approach. And that this one person is saying, well, that scares me a little bit. If we're differentiating to keep it manageable, how many groups do you recommend?
Yes. Oh, great question. Great question. Now, sometimes people start, and I'm not wild about this, although I've done it and seen teachers do it, where they start the whole class with the sword. Now that's okay if you start with a relatively easy sword. You're showing them how Mr. Bear wants you to sword. You're showing them the routine for word study. And I'm all about going with an easy sword.
Mhm.
Once you've given a spelling assessment or looked at their reading levels and started to think about your groups, and that's what I do in PLC, so professional learning, is work together with teachers to try to do that work. Once I have my groups, then I start focusing. And sometimes teachers come in and they've organized it into 5 groups, and I'm not that good. Now, I'm that good if I have teachers like Sam come in, and if I have an extra teacher or 2, like seriously, I can get a tutor, I can get a special educator, I can get an interventionist, an RTI person. I can do that. But now I want to take 2 minutes and show you a second. Let me see if I got it. There we go. This is a 2nd grade teacher, Mandy Ravenstein. And the guy in the green shirt, he's pretty anxious. He's got it. Mandy had 17 kids in the same developmental level. And that's going to happen to you. And that's great, because what she did is she introduced the sword, demonstrated the sword with all 17. And that kid's still raising his hand. So anyway, 17. And then, okay, and they demonstrated. That's the sword. I get so excited. But that's the R controlled. It's pretty tough.
So with that, Donald,
I'm sorry. Then she breaks the 17 into 2 groups. She can get her hands on working with the kids and really watch them sword. And let me show you what the other kids are doing. So she took her 17 students, broke it into 2 groups, and there's one group, and here's part of the other group. And she's at her seat. She's taking out her sort in a pod, and they're sorting independently or not independently. Here, this child's in a different group altogether, and she's in her sort, and then writing the words into her word study notebook. Oh, and that's me on the left, cheating just as much as I can, but we don't call it cheating. We call it working together. And so that's Ms. Ravenstein's class, where they're on the floor playing games. You can see the game in the background. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I mean, I guess my question was around, we hear a lot now about this call for an explicit scope and sequence, which we know that Upwards Their Way has. So would it be, another question coming in is, would it be okay to teach it like that one teacher did, where you're teaching the grade level expectation whole group and you're meeting a group of students where they are, but then, like you said, you're differentiating to meet those other students' needs as well. So you're kind of killing 2 birds then with 1 stone.
Yes and no. I mean, when you said grade level, okay, the student, I'm working with a kid who's in he's in 5th grade now. But in 4th grade, he was still working on single syllable words.
Right.
But the curriculum called for 2-syllable word study. He wasn't ready for it. And so I don't quite know your question, but I want to make sure that that kid has different word study. Now, I do want to take you to one teacher who I think is really expert. And I'll show you the same sort of thing. Is that okay, Sam?
Sure, of course.
I have a minute or 2 left. Mrs. Bruscotter is a 5th grade teacher. She does whole class on vocabulary, and then she does small group developmentally.
Right.
I'll show you what I'm talking about. And those are her 4 groups. Notice in 5th grade, she's still got kids working on beginning reading, or F and G, if you use that sort of verbiage. Are you with me, guys out there?
Yep.
And then this is the whole class. And as you see on the back of her, what she's trying to teach is a standard that says, I know what a prefix is, and I know what a suffix is. But some kids will be able to do a lot with that, and some kids won't. Some kids could work with un and re, whereas other kids can work with tion. Big difference.
Yeah.
And then this is her differentiated group. These kids are working on constant open and closed syllables. This is her whole class, and that's the small group. And so what I need to learn how to do is, how do I manage the rest of those kids when I'm working in small group? And that's an open and closed from our program, Words Their Way Classroom. Here, the child on the left is calling out words, and you can see their contract on the table there. Here's a child looking for a word hunt, writing in her word study notebook. And this is one of our sorts in our program. So that shows you how I can do some whole class work, but I really have to differentiate for developmental to help them be better readers. This is not a spelling program. If it is a spelling program, you have to understand that it really is designed to teach phonics and vocabulary. Look at Stephen Graham's work, and he does tremendous work looking at spelling and its impact on reading. In my writing, I go back to colonial days where spelling was a way of teaching phonics.
Well, thank you, Donald Bear, so much. We will be following up. We're almost at time. We have about 1 minute left. I will be making sure I'm just getting over the scope and sequence. I'm going to put it in the chat for everyone, because I know more and more you're being asked to have something that has an explicit scope and sequence, so you can see that's there, knowing that really Words Their Way is intended to be implemented from a developmental perspective. Thank you again for your time today, Donald, and to all of the participants. We will be, as I said, sharing this recording as well as any handouts that were put in the chat. If you joined late and weren't able to get them, we will be sending them out after the presentation today. Thank you, and thank you for all that you do. Have a great day, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, teachers. Bye-bye.